In a way, Sonic 3D Blast is the best version of 3D Sonic. There's no voice acting, a very manageable story, and, for Sonic purists, he still has black eyes. When it was released in November 1996, 3D Blast was met with some of the same criticism that jabs modern Sonic games. Complaints about janky controls, an off-kilter camera, and poor pacing were only partially assuaged by the title's strengths. Graphically, 3D Blast offered some of the best visuals the Sega Genesis had to offer, and musically, well, it paved a legacy of its own. Sonic 3D Blast was a manifestation of the gaming industry's hype at the time. The promise of 3D graphics had yet to be fully realized, with Sony's PlayStation and Nintendo 64 just starting to take steps in what would become the dominant perspective of future game releases. Side note, I just realized that Nintendo is the only of the big three console houses to use its company name in the naming of their systems. Nintendo's Super Nintendo sounds odd compared to Microsoft's Xbox. Anyway, 3D Blast was Sega's last-ditch effort to glom onto the nascent gaming craze. Development of Sonic X-treme was on the fritz. The Sega Saturn lacked the market hold to make producing a truly 3D game viable, so Sega contracted out UK developer Traveller's Tales to fill a 3D Sonic void. Though it was originally supposed to be a final fanfare for the Sega Genesis, 3D Blast became the gold standard for 3D Sonic. Just shy of 2 months' work brought the Genesis game to completion, with the Saturn port released alongside of it in the US. Like it or not, Sonic 3D Blast was unavoidable, being the lone, mainline Sonic game until Sonic Adventure in 1998. Whenever I return to Sonic 3D Blast, it's at a crossroads. I don't view it as a member of the traditional three-dimensional series, what with its isometric point of view and lack of dialogue. But it's also a step beyond the classic games, diverting from the side-scrolling action in favor of non-linear exploration. Still, in revisiting the game, I don't hate it as much as I thought I did. Yes, 3D Blast is rough around the edges. Its obtuse camera angle is a greater challenge than anything the game has to offer, and the lack of speed pushes the gameplay closer to a primitive Crash Bandicoot than a true Sonic game. Despite being largely forgotten in favor of Sonic's true 3D debut, Sonic 3D Blast lives on in the Sonic Adventure soundtrack. A few songs from the Genesis game make a reprisal, earning homages not unlike the ones 3D Blast paid to its predecessors. But even if the gameplay is viewed as better left unplayed, Sonic 3D Blast's soundtrack is a crash course in what would power the Blue Blur's gameplay for years to come. Sonic has a sticky habit of not being able to shake the past, and 3D Blast is no different. Where Sonic 3D Blast differs, however, is in the game's ability to both showcase its reverence for the classic games while sprinkling in new features that would pop up in future games. The checkerboard pattern that welcomes players to Green Hill Zone is abundant in 3D Blast. The squares are scaled up such that at first glance, it might seem like Sonic's movement is grid-based. It's not. This visual cue is paired with both functional and non-functional scenery, like the balloons in Spring Stadium that harken back to the helium bubbles of Carnival Night Zone. These throwback touches are complemented by the 3D Blast soundtrack, which upgrades classic Sonic sound stylings for a more modern palette. The OSTs for the original 2D games were an experiment in genre diversity. Sonic became a pop icon not only for his edgier attitude compared to Mario, but for his music, which borrowed from music of the day. Spring Yard Zone, for example, in Sonic 1 is a punchy New Jack Swing track in the vein of Janet Jackson's 1986 album Control. Of course, Jackson and Sonic would cross paths again in 1997 when Jackson's Together Again employed a melody eerily similar to the music of Bridge Zone, but that's a story for another day. But the 3D Blast Genesis songs don't stop at recreating the magic of years gone by. Rather, they rely on the Genesis' old-school sound tools to create some of the most forward-thinking Sonic music to date. While the Sega Saturn version saw Europop composer Richard Jacques take the 3D Blast soundtrack to new and jazzy heights, the Genesis version music was composed by the Sega Sound team. Relative series newcomer Jun Senoue led a team of musicians that included Tatsuki Maeda, Masaru Setsumaru, and Seiro Okamoto. By 1996, Senoue, Maeda, and Setsumaru had lent their talents to the Sonic series, having participated in the creation of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Truthfully, the 3D Blast sound was largely credited to Senoue and Maeda, who composed and arranged the overwhelming majority of the game's music. What's most interesting about the game's soundtrack is how Maeda and Senoue managed to adapt Sonic's musical identity, which relies heavily on the merging of relaxing, natural sounds with frenetic mechanical noises, to 3D Blast's relatively divergent gameplay. Being an exploratory game at its core, the music of 3D Blast had to account for increased playtime. While players can usually speed through a zone in somewhere around 2 minutes in the classic series, 3D Blast levels can last anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes. Fittingly, these songs are long. Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1 loops after just 37 seconds, which, if you know what you're doing, is about 10 seconds longer than it takes to actually finish the act. Comparatively, Green Grove Zone loops after 1 minute and 25 seconds, giving players more robust background music as they hunt for flickies. Speaking of Green Grove Zone, in Act 2, Senoue remixes the track to begin with stomping, house-like percussion, before unraveling into an even springier version of the original. When I played this game as a kid, my attention usually tapped out right around getting to the second zone, Rusty Ruin. Or rather, my chubby fingers didn't allow me to guide Sonic through the level's tight quarters while he pirouetted around the ruins, so I usually swapped the game out for Sonic 2. I do remember being mesmerized by the zone's music, which I heard more often from the sound tests or in the in-game demo than from the actual gameplay. Sonic's coolness becomes immediately apparent in Act 1, as the tightly looping synths wrap around a speaker-knocking drum line that makes use of some of the most authentic drum samples I can remember hearing on the Genesis. The track, which is Satsuki Maeda's first chance to wow the player, does exactly that. Around 1 minute and 20 seconds in, he drops in a clean breakdown that shines a spotlight on just how clean the hypnotic percussion is. Maeda puts the bass and percussion front and center in Act 2, stripping back the original mix to highlight speckles of synth in favor of a hearty beat that represents the slog of a level Rusty Ruins can be. I doubt that Senoue or Maeda felt that composing for this game was a competition, but the soundtrack feels like both are trying to woo the player with their own distinct styles. In Diamond Dust Zone, Maeda continues with his generally more funky sound choices, punctuating the melody with twinkling accompaniments that play up the level's shimmering snow and ice. Act 2, much like Ice Cap 2 from Sonic 3, sees the original stripped back, the high end subtly filtered out to keep the melody from grating on the player's ear. Maeda again gives his percussion the spotlight in Volcano Valley, using droning synths to emulate the gurgling lava all around Sonic. By contrast, Senoue's compositions definitely favor more complex melodies than drum patterns, and for good reason. In the years that followed Sonic 3D Blast, Senoue would earn recognition, if not a level of meminess, for his electric guitar virtuosity. Through Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Senoue's music would redefine the hedgehog, turning the lovable, pot-bellied woodland creature into an even edgier, spinier teenage terror. 6-year-olds who played Sonic 1 at release would be 16 when Sonic Adventure 2 dropped. Senoue's music would help the aging fanbase rediscover why they love the sporty mammal so much. While Senoue's compositions for 3D Blast were more tame than anything he'd write for the Adventure series, he did showcase his ability to transform level thematics into song. Spring Stadium captures all the fun of the music of Sonic's first casino/carnival level, Casino Night Zone from Sonic 2, while upping the tempo to contrast with this zone's slower paced gameplay. Jumping back to Maeda for a second, I want to acknowledge the importance of bass in creating tension in Sonic soundtracks. The bass in Chemical Plant for Sonic 2, for example, is notably lower pitched than its Emerald Hill predecessor. As such, players immediately feel a bit more uneasy as they race through the zone, which puts forth the first earnest attempt to actually kill Sonic. In 3D Blast, Maeda engages this tonality perfectly in Gene Gadget Zone, which features a driving bass line that does everything short of tell Sonic outright that he doesn't belong here. That's not to say Sonic 3D Blast doesn't have its shortcomings. The game was produced in a mere 7 weeks to rush in time for the 1996 holiday season. Musically, this is apparent in the game's opening cutscene, which uses the intro of the Panic Puppet Zone as its backing track. On the contrary, 3D Blast somehow managed to have 2 boss themes, in addition to a third unused one. Maeda and Senoue split the composing duties for versions 1 and 2 respectively. Maeda seems to have made a lasting impression with his bassline, which is inserted right into the intro of the track Windy and Ripley for Sonic Adventure 1. Here's Windy and Ripley. And here's the 3D Blast boss music. Senoue's boss music makes things grander, using higher registers and what I assume is a callback to music for some of Robotnik's most deadly machines in Sonic 2 and 3. Strangely, Masaru Setsumaru was tasked with creating the final boss music, which leans more towards the techno side of things. The song doesn't sound like it would be out of place in a Mega Man Battle Network or Bomberman 64 game, as its flowing synths leave the level's visual black void of space open for imaginative interpretation. I'm pleasantly surprised in returning to Sonic 3D Blast after all these years. For a while, I fell into the trap of thinking that all the game was good for was introducing the home attack and a few Sonic Adventure songs. Sega wouldn't return to the isometric style until Sonic Battle for the Game Boy Advance, so going back to play 3D Blast is always a test of my patience. But hearing how well the music panned out, given that the game was rushed to meet deadlines, helps raise my tolerance for its shortcomings. In retrospect, I'm even hesitant to call 3D Blast a spinoff. When I think of the term spinoff, I think about Sonic Spinball and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. These are games that completely stepped away from the platforming formula of the original titles. Sure, 3D Blast is far from conventional, but it retains enough similarities with its predecessors, busting badniks and finishing special stages, which, when coupled with the soundtrack, give the game the right to sit with the other main series titles. Though I would have loved to have gotten Sonic Extreme, it might be for the best we didn't. That game purportedly was to feature a longer, more narrative-driven story, in contrast to the classic series' no-text affairs. I'm not sure the world would have been ready for a story-heavy Sonic game, especially considering how the increasingly involved campaigns of the 2000s eventually led Sega to dumb down their narratives right around the time of Sonic Unleashed. In other words, Sonic 3D Blast is the game we deserved. It's not perfect, no Sonic game is, but there was just enough good to keep the fanbase from completely turning on the Hedgehog before Sonic Adventure. At the very least, Sega's sound team redefined what was possible for Sonic music, and helped pave the way for future games that would take inspiration from the classic synths and samples and orchestrate them on an entirely new level. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you like what you heard and saw, feel free to check me out over on my Twitter page or my Medium account, where I write about video game music and a lot more. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.